Really? Really? In the past, we've talked about ESPN making business decisions based on the reactions they see on social media. More specifically, making business decisions based solely on the reactions they see on Twitter or X. For example, if one of their paid propagandists says something emotionally triggering on First Take, and that comment causes one male birthing person to stop trying to conceive a child with their emotional support shovel and express their fake outrage on social media instead, ESPN will issue an insincere forced apology. When Stephen A. Smith rightfully claimed that Major League Baseball couldn't market their league around Shohei Ohtani because he's not fluent in the primary language in this country, Spanish, even though Stephen A. Smith was absolutely right, ESPN forced him to apologize on social media. And if I remember correctly, I think they suspended him for a couple of days too. Why? Because someone in Tokyo or Beijing, they might have been offended by his comments. This powerful organization, this multi-billion-dollar media enterprise, caters to people whose only skill is spanking the wanker. Earlier this afternoon, we were given the latest example of ESPN making god-awful business decisions based on social media reactions. Now, I gotta be honest with you. This is absolutely mind-boggling to me. We all knew that ESPN was going to re-sign Mina Kimes. I mean, that was a given. What I didn't know was ESPN was going to pay Mina Kimes like she's on the same level of Stephen A. Smith or Pat McAfee. Correct me if I'm wrong here. Didn't ESPN just go through another massive round of layoffs? Didn't they just let go of actual talent like Jeff Van Gundy, Susie Colbert, Keyshawn Johnson? Now, I'm no expert in business, but I would assume when a media company is looking for talent to lay off, they look at two things: salary and value. How much are you paying the talent and what value does the talent bring to the network? Now, in the case of someone like Jeff Van Gundy, he brings immense value to NBA broadcast. Now, as you guys know, Jeff Van Gundy wasn't my personal favorite NBA broadcaster, but he was very, very popular amongst NBA fans. Now, I didn't like his style, but that doesn't mean I don't respect his work and don't respect his value. With someone like Jeff Van Gundy, though, ESPN can send him to the unemployment line, save his millions of dollars in salary, and ratings won't be affected. You could make the case that Jeff Van Gundy's value didn't match his salary. Now, whether you agree or not, it's a fair assessment. The problem is that same assessment, it doesn't seem to apply equally at ESPN, the network that is supposedly dedicated to equality. Now, if I were responsible for the layoffs at ESPN, I would have cleaned house. Outside of a select few like Stephen A. and Scott Van Pelt, maybe a handful of others, I would have let everyone go. This network is in desperate, desperate need of eradicating the woke fungus. But one of the talents that was spared from the massive layoff at ESPN was the beautiful Mina Kimes. Not only was her job saved, it seems that ESPN laid off other talent to free up millions of dollars so they could donate that woke welfare to the beautiful Mina Kimes. Earlier this afternoon, the New York Post, they reported the exciting news that Mina Kimes signed her new contract extension with ESPN. Now, if I were to ask you, what is the fair market value for Mina Kimes? What would your answer be? How much money is she worth every year? Just to give you some perspective here, Mina Kimes does not host her own show on TV or radio. She makes appearances on NFL Live and Around the Horn. During football season, I think she even makes appearances on SportsCenter, sometimes on First Take. Her official job title is NFL Analyst. This always perplexes me. ESPN considers Mina Kimes an NFL analyst because she bonded with her father by watching the Seattle Seahawks. If that's the case, I must be a landscaping analyst. My father is a professional landscaper. He maintains and installs irrigation systems. We talk about his work all the time. I guess that makes me a professional landscaper, right? Believe me when I tell you, my landscaping skills, they are just as bad as Mina Kimes analyzing the National Football League. But anyway, With the role that she serves at the network, which is basically the role Caitlin Collins, Katie Roo, the role Caitlin Collins used to serve at CNN before being promoted to prime time to help, what is the fair market value for Mina Kimes? $500,000? $750,000? Let's be generous here. Mina Kimes is a dedicated private in the woke army. She has spent years perfecting her role as the ultimate victim. Let's be generous and say Mina Kimes is worth $1 million a year. Does that sound fair to you? If so, you would be devaluing Mina Kimes in the eyes of the shitfucks at ESPN because they believe Tiny Tina's worth $1.7 million a year, and they are also allowing her to collect another $300,000 from her brother in woke, Dan Le Batard. $2 million? You mean to tell me Mina Kimes is worth $2 million? Look, I'm happy for Mina Kimes here. I will never begrudge anyone for making money. I don't blame Mina Kimes for using her God-given gifts of checking enough woke boxes to convince ESPN that she's worth $2 million. Hell, if we're lucky, this deal will cause ESPN to go bankrupt. But what I'm having a hard time understanding here is the value provided. Why does ESPN feel like Mina Kimes is worth $2 million a year? I'm not talking about her woke value. I understand why ESPN gave her this deal. She's a minority and she's a woman. The only thing more powerful than that at ESPN is dudes with plenty of melanin. The value I'm talking about relates to business. In terms of business, in terms of television ratings, what value does Mina Kimes provide? I'll go ahead and answer that question for you. None. In terms of drawing TV ratings, Mina Kimes is completely useless. There's not one show on ESPN where ratings are boosted because Mina Kimes makes an appearance. I have always wondered why ESPN has never given Tiny Tina her own show. She's very well spoken. She's a natural on camera. Just because she's not qualified to analyze the NFL doesn't mean that Mina Kimes doesn't have talent. Since arriving at ESPN, the network has tried desperately to turn Mina Kimes into a star. They have tried desperately to convince us that Mina Kimes has credibility analyzing the NFL, but they've never given her her own show. Why do you think that is? It's pure speculation on my part, but maybe, just maybe, ESPN saw what happened when they tried that strategy with Bomani Jones and how it ruined his media career. I'll give them credit. ESPN's been smart with the role of Mina Kimes. They have never put her in a position to be a huge embarrassing failure. Because trust me, if Mina Kimes was given her own show, that is exactly what would happen. Huge, embarrassing failure. She appears on NFL Live. Their ratings suck. She appears on Woke Take. Doesn't move the needle. She often appears on Around the Horn. Casey, what the hell's Around the Horn? Exactly my point. Around the Horn used to draw monster ratings. Last I checked, show was hovering around 300,000 viewers. Now, I've always been under the impression that the only thing that mattered in the business of television was the talent's ability to draw an audience. Every show that Mina Kimes appears on doesn't draw ratings, so I'm struggling to understand how she's worth $2 million. Here's something else I'm struggling to understand this afternoon. Remember a couple of months ago when ESPN announced their deal with Pat McAfee? Shortly after that deal was announced, ESPN laid off some of the favorite shitfucks at Woke United Methodist. Even former pastor Father Jalen Rose was included in that round of layoffs. Dedicated worshipers like Stephen A. Smith, they were concerned. He lost his counselor. He lost his worship leader. How was Brother Stephen supposed to remain strong in his woke faith? How was he supposed to preach the good word without the assistance of Father Jalen Rose? Do you remember who the media blamed? Do you remember who received the most blame, the most backlash for these layoffs on social media? Lonely men and worshipers of the oak tree. They didn't blame ESPN. They blamed Pat McAfee. How dare the white man accept millions from ESPN while our beloved pastor is forced to collect food stamps? This is another example of the white man taking a job from the black man. Now, to be fair, Even though it wasn't Pat McAfee's fault, I could understand how dumbasses came to that conclusion. ESPN is struggling financially. They're laying off hundreds of people while they're giving Pat McAfee millions of dollars. But it's strange. I'm not seeing that same level of backlash today with Mina Kimes. I have yet to see one article in the mainstream media criticizing Mina Kimes for accepting this deal. I have yet to see one article that blamed Tina for getting rich while other people were losing their jobs. I wonder why. Let me put this salary into perspective for you. I'm going to list some of the other talent at ESPN that's making around the same money as Mina Kimes. Paul Feinbaum, very popular down here in the South, very popular in the world of college football. Now, I don't pretend to understand why. I haven't listened to his radio show in years, but all he used to do was answer the phone and put on entertaining redneck Alabama fans. Paul Feinbaum was like a glorified phone operator, a secretary. But to his credit, he turned that into a lucrative career in radio and at ESPN. Paul Feinbaum provides value. Ryan Clark is a doofus, but at least he played in the NFL. I don't respect his victimhood, but I do respect his knowledge of the NFL. Ryan Clark provides value. Dominique Foxworth, the male with a female voice and a female name. Hell, he fits right in at ESPN. He also played in the league. Dominique Foxworth, he is qualified to analyze the NFL. He provides value. And then we've got Mina Kimes. What value does she provide? Her analysis of the NFL, it's no different than mine or no different than yours. She is incapable of providing insight. She is incapable of breaking down film. She doesn't know what goes through a player or a coach's mind because she's never been in their shoes. Mina Kimes wears stilettos, not cleats. With her new deal, Mina Kimes is now one of the highest paid NFL analysts at ESPN. Someone please make that make sense. One of the highest paid analysts at the network is unqualified to analyze the league. Is it any wonder why ESPN no longer has any credibility? Is it any wonder why people constantly complain about their coverage of the NFL? This is what affirmative action looks like. High-paying jobs given to people based on their marginalized status instead of their skill set. And again, I am not against Mina Kimes getting paid. This is not her fault. And I'm not saying Mina Kimes doesn't have talent because she does. I'm against ESPN lying to me, presenting someone as an NFL analyst when they're not. Just because I like steak, that doesn't mean I'm qualified to be a butcher. Just because I drink whiskey doesn't mean I'm qualified to be a bartender. If a man drinks Bud Light, that doesn't mean he's qualified to be the next Dylan Mulvaney. And just because Mina Kimes watches NFL Red Zone and pays attention to meaningless statistics, that does not mean she is qualified to be an NFL analyst. But give me your thoughts. Is Mina Kimes worth $2 million a year? You tell me the value that she provides to ESPN. Where does she draw ratings? How does she make the network money? Someone please make it make sense. Sound off in the comments below. Make sure to like and subscribe. Click the notification bell to receive all notifications from the channel. Best way to contact me is by email at btlkc84@gmail.com, KC_BTL84 on Twitter. I'll see you guys tomorrow.